I thought I was just going to my brother's wedding. I had no idea I was walking straight into a reminder of how little I actually mattered. What happened that day still plays in my head, every word, every glance, every insult wrapped in a smile. I didn't plan to talk about it, but something's cut too deep to stay buried. My name's Nick. I'm 33, and honestly, after what went down at my brother's wedding, I've got to let it out. Just to give you some background, my relationship with my younger brother, Brandon, has always been messy. He's 30 now, charming, successful, and really good at playing the role of the golden child. Me? I've always been the quiet one, the one who plans things out, steps in to fix the messes, and covers costs when our parents couldn't. Yet somehow, I've always felt like I was just part of the background, while everyone else got the spotlight. Brandon and I didn't grow up close. He was the kind of kid who'd break something and then blame it on me, and I'd take the hit just to avoid another family meltdown. Mom and Dad would sigh and say, "He's still learning, Nick. You're older. Set the example." And I did. Even when he took my car without asking at 16, crashed into a parked truck, and put a huge dent in the side, I paid the insurance and never said a word. Then, at 20, he called me from jail. He tried to swipe some cologne for his girlfriend and got caught. Guess who bailed him out? That's right, me. Kept quiet. Again, just trying to keep the peace. Now here we are, present day. Brandon's tying the knot with a woman named Heather. I've met her a few times over the past couple of years, and to be honest, we never really connected. She has this way of talking with her eyes half closed, like whatever you're saying is already boring her. Always dressed to perfection, always scanning the room like she's waiting for someone more interesting to show up. One time, she even called my job in logistics cute. I kept my distance after that. Still, when the wedding invites went out, I said yes. I even helped Brandon out a little, recommended this great caterer I'd worked with through my company, and he went with them. I didn't expect to be the best man or anything. I'm not delusional, but I figured I'd at least get a decent seat and a moment to feel like part of the family. The venue was stunning, set out in the countryside, with twinkling string lights wrapped around these big oak beams and a peaceful little lake behind it all. It looked like something out of a fairy tale, picture perfect for social media. I got there early, holding a wrapped gift, a sleek, engraved decanter set with their initials and the wedding date. Nothing flashy, just something tasteful they could keep. I walked over to the welcome table, where a woman wearing a headset and holding a clipboard greeted me with a stiff smile. "You're Adrian, right?" she asked. I nodded. She glanced at her list and frowned. "You're marked down as a +1. I blinked. "Wait, what?" She explained that since I was listed under +1s and didn't bring anyone, they'd put me at a table near the kitchen entrance, right by the fold-out chairs. "If you'd brought a guest, it would have been different," she added. That's when my stomach dropped. "I'm his brother." Her eyes widened. "Oh, I'm really sorry. That must be a mistake. Let me." But before she could finish, Heather swooped in. Perfect dress, perfect makeup, and that cold, perfect smile. "Hey, Adrian," she said, stretching my name out like it tasted bad. "Glad you could make it. I told the planner about the seating. Hope that's okay." She went on about how space was tight and they had to make some hard choices. I looked right at her and said, "You sat me by the kitchen." She gave a quick laugh. "Not in the kitchen. Just close to it. It's the section for +1s, you know." Then she added that since I wasn't technically in the bridal party, they had to prioritize close friends and extended family. No hard feelings, right? I looked past her into the reception space. Fancy tables, floating candles, people laughing and sipping champagne. My uncle, who hadn't spoken to Brandon in years, was sitting front and center. My cousin Ethan, who once stole cash from our grandmother's purse, had a spot too. Then I saw her Tessa, my ex, 2 tables from the bride and groom, laughing over a glass of wine. She and I had dated 4 years ago. Brandon had introduced us. And when we broke up, I found out they'd kept in touch. So of course she had a seat. She must have caught where my eyes had landed. "Oh yeah, we invited Tessa," she said casually. She and Brandon stayed close. She's always been super supportive. Hope that's okay. I didn't respond. Just nodded, slow and tight. I made my way over to the seat I'd been assigned, a fold-out tucked at the far end of a small table, right beside a swinging door the servers were constantly pushing through. They kept brushing by with trays stacked high, murmuring apologies as they passed. It was loud, hot. The air reeked of fish and something scorched with rosemary. I sat down. Just for a second. The music kicked in, and the couple made their entrance. People stood, clapping. I watched Brandon lean in and whisper something to Tessa as they walked past her table. She smiled at him, warm, too warm. My eyes drifted to the gift I'd brought. It had been set aside with a growing pile of unopened boxes, unnoticed and ignored. That's when I stood, walked back over, picked up the box, and headed for the exit. I was passing the dance floor when Heather spotted me. She turned, called out, "Wait, where are you going?" I stopped, turned around, nice and slow. The room quieted just enough to catch what I said under my breath, +1 this. There were gasps, maybe even a chuckle from somewhere in the back. I didn't care. I kept walking steady, calm. That's probably what made it worse for them. I wasn't making a scene. I was just done. By the time I reached the parking lot, I heard footsteps catching up behind me. It was Brandon, jogging after me, Tuck's jacket flapping, and his expression scrambled. "Nick, wait, man. What was that? Why are you leaving?" "It's my wedding." I turned to face him. "You let her stick me by the kitchen." He hesitated. I didn't realize. She did the seating chart. I just thought, look, it's not that big of a deal, right? I shook my head. "Not a big deal? You gave my ex a better seat than your own brother." He looked uncomfortable, scratching his neck. "We weren't trying to exclude you. Heather just wanted certain people near the front. She didn't want any tension." "Tension?" I repeated. "You mean me being in the same room as your friend-turned-ex who used to date your brother?" He didn't answer. That silence? That's when something inside me shifted. Or maybe it finally clicked back into place. I didn't yell, didn't throw the gift, didn't say anything cruel. I just turned, got in my car, and started it up. As I pulled away, I saw him still standing there in the gravel, half raising his hand, half unsure whether to be mad or embarrassed. And that wasn't even the real fallout. I didn't go straight home. Just drove. No destination, windows down, letting the night air keep my temper from boiling over. I ended up at this overlook just outside of town, the kind of place where you can see the city lights stretching out forever, like fireflies on a black sheet. I parked, sat in the silence, and I let it all rise to the surface. Not just the wedding, but years of this. Years of being overlooked, stepped over, used. Always the background. Always disposable in a story that was never really mine. And right then, in that silence, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to keep swallowing it. I wasn't going to be quiet anymore just to make things easier for everyone else. I ignored Brandon's texts that night, and the ones the next morning. Even Heather's message that said, "Hey, sorry about the mix-up yesterday. Hope you're not still upset. Let's move on." I didn't reply, but I did open my laptop. See, I work in logistics and events. Not just deliveries and schedules. I manage crises, handle vendors, keep everything running behind the scenes. And one of our recent clients? That caterer they used for the wedding. The one I'd recommended. The one I helped grow by sending consistent business their way. So I picked up the phone and made a professional call to Linda, the manager. She's sweet, on top of things, and had already thanked me for the referral after the wedding. I told her the truth that I felt brushed aside. That I wasn't just a +1. That I'd be rethinking whether I could keep sending work her way. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that stuck with me. "They really had us scrambling," Linda said on the phone, her voice tight but honest. "They underpaid the deposit, then switched out nearly half the guest list few days before the event. Honestly, if you hadn't stepped in and handled the logistics, we never would have pulled it off." Then she paused. "I'm really sorry you were treated like that." That was all I needed to hear. One quiet apology, but buried in it was everything. There were weaknesses. Receipts. Contracts. Opportunities. I didn't explode. That's never been my style. I don't believe in burning things to the ground, not right away, at least. I prefer quiet precision, a slow unraveling. So I started small. First, I canceled the second part of their wedding gift. See, that decanter I brought wasn't the whole thing. I'd also arranged for a beautiful set of matching crystal glassware to be delivered to their apartment the following week. Something elegant, classy, something they'd used for years. At least, that had been the plan. Instead, I rerouted the delivery. Straight to my place. I figured I deserved something nice. Might as well pour my whiskey into a glass that cost more than the way they valued me. Next came the photographer, a friend of mine who'd taken stunning shots at the wedding. She was the kind of artist whose work made everyone look like they belonged in a magazine. She usually offered discounts to friends and family I referred, and I referred a lot of business her way. I called her quick and to the point. Told her I wouldn't be sending any more referrals if she gave Brandon and Heather that rate. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. She just said she understood. That's how I operate quiet moves. Clean cuts. I was pulling out of their lives thread by thread, like undoing a sweater one tug at a time. But the real moment? That came about a week later. I got an email from Brandon. Subject line. Need help? No context. No greeting. Just that. I opened it. And of course, it was a favor. Turns out they were trying to extend their honeymoon. Heather's wealthy uncle had gifted them a lavish 3-week trip to Phuket. But things had gone sideways. Passports expired sooner than expected. They were scrambling for last-minute renewals, rebooking international flights, coordinating villa transfers. Basically a logistical nightmare. And now, they needed me. Brandon's words, "You're the only one I trust to handle this kind of thing. You're good at this stuff. Please, man." No mention of the wedding. No acknowledgement of how I'd been treated. No apology. Just a needy hand stretched out through the screen, expecting the same fixer I'd always been to jump in again. I stared at the email for a long time. I even opened a draft reply. "Hey Brandon, I'd love to help, but unfortunately this +1 doesn't take bookings anymore. Good luck." I almost hit send. I really did. But then I smiled, because I realized I didn't need to send it. Instead, I forwarded the email to Megan, an old colleague of mine who specializes in emergency travel logistics for high-end clients. She works fast, under pressure, and protects her network like a vault. I didn't ask her to help them. I asked her to blacklist them. Yeah, it was petty. I'm not gonna lie. But it wasn't impulsive. It was earned. It felt like reclaiming something that had been taken from me a long time ago. For years, I'd been the one keeping everything together. The steady one, the calm one, the problem solver in the background. And this time, I let the problem burn. 2 days passed. Then came the text from Brandon. This time, he didn't sound like a groom. He sounded like a man whose whole plan had collapsed. "Did you tell Megan not to help us?" "She said we were flagged as non-client blockers." "What the hell? We're stuck in Thailand. Flights got canceled. The villa won't refund anything." Heather's flipping out. "What's your problem, man?" Still, I said nothing. I was out that night, grabbing dinner with a friend, when Heather's name showed up on my phone. She didn't text this time. She called. I let it ring. Then came the voicemail. "Nick, I don't know what your issue is, but Brandon is seriously losing it. If this is about the wedding, you need to grow up. We didn't mean to hurt your feelings." "Okay. You've made your point. Now stop being childish and fix it." I laughed. I couldn't help it. A full laugh. Right there at the table. My friend looked up, confused, and I just shook my head. I didn't fix it. Didn't respond. I didn't have to. Because they didn't realize something important. The fallout was only just beginning. Remember that catering invoice I mentioned? The one they didn't pay in full? Turns out, the contract had a very specific clause. If a client submits the wrong guest count, makes last-minute dietary changes after the deadline, and fails to pay the final balance within 2 weeks, it's a breach. And breaching that clause? That opens up a whole new kind of headache. That little clause in the catering contract? The one buried in the fine print? It carried a 25% penalty for violations, guest list changes, dietary updates past the deadline, and missed payments. And Linda? She was done chasing them down for it. So she filed a formal complaint with the venue. That single move kicked off a domino effect. The bartender, also unpaid in full, did the same. Within a matter of days, Brandon and Heather weren't just recovering from a ruined honeymoon. They were looking at thousands in late fees, additional charges, and lost security deposits. All because they thought cutting corners and cutting me out would cost them nothing. And the wild part? I still hadn't played my final card. It was maybe a few weeks later when I started seeing wedding photos popping up online. A distant cousin had posted an album on social media with the caption, "Beautiful wedding, unforgettable night. Congrats Brandon and Heather." I clicked out of pure curiosity, not expecting much. But what I saw hit harder than I'd imagined. It was like watching a highlight reel of my own absence. Nearly 100 pictures. And in exactly one of them, you could make out the back of my head, blurry, caught in the background near the kitchen door. No group shots. No family portraits. Not even a candid at a table. I wasn't in any of the videos either. None of the toasts, none of the dancing, not a single mention in the thank you caption that listed everyone who made the day so magical. But you know who was tagged? Tessa. Her name was in the comments, the likes, the captions. She was interacting like she was part of the inner circle, like the breakup never happened, like she belonged more than I ever did. And that's when it really hit me. This wasn't just poor planning. It wasn't some seating chart oversight or wedding day stress. It was intentional. Heather had decided I was irrelevant, and Brandon had agreed. That's when I knew I couldn't just disappear quietly anymore. I wasn't going to keep swallowing this invisible role they assigned me. I was going to show them exactly who I was. So I made a post. Just one. Calm. Clean. Honest. It was a slideshow, just a few behind-the-scenes photos I'd taken on my phone before the wedding. Me helping the florist arrange centerpieces. Me adjusting table numbers. Me in conversation with the caterer, making sure setup went smoothly. I included a screenshot of an email Heather's planner had accidentally sent to me in a group thread, one where my name was labeled +1, Brandon's brother, in parentheses. Not even a name. Just a tag on. Then I added a caption. Helped plan the wedding. Found the venue. Got the caterer a discount. Showed up early to help set up. Was seated next to the kitchen as a +1. Bride said I should understand. So I left quietly. 2 weeks later, they asked for help again. This time, I declined. Apparently, that makes me petty. I didn't expect much from the post, but it spread fast within our circle. People shared it, commented, messaged me. Old high school classmates, past coworkers, even distant relatives. My cousin messaged me, saying, I knew something felt off that day. You looked so uncomfortable. I'm really sorry. I didn't respond to everyone, but I read every word, and it felt honest. It wasn't just the sympathy that mattered. It was finally being seen. But what happened next, that's what really told me I'd hit a nerve. Few days after that post, Brandon called. I let it go to voicemail. His voice sounded different this time. Not angry, just nervous. Hey, Heather's mom saw your post, and now Heather's freaking out. She says you're trying to ruin her image. Her boss follows you, man. She's saying we need you to take it down. Please. I listened to that message at the gym. Then again, walking back to my car. I never called back. Instead, I made a second post. Been asked to delete my last post. Apparently, the truth is damaging to someone's image. I'd delete it if it wasn't 100% true. I won't be silenced for the sake of appearances. I spent too many years making myself small for other people's comfort. Never again. No names. No anger. Just the facts. That was the trick. People can argue feelings, but they can't erase screenshots or seating charts. And that second post? It hit even harder. Heather's boss didn't comment publicly, but a friend of mine sent me a screenshot from a company Slack channel, some internal reminder about upholding respectful conduct and how public perception reflects professional character. And just like that, the crack spread wider. A few hours later, I got a full-blown call from Heather's mother. Not a voicemail this time. She let it ring until it stopped, then called again. Eventually, she left a long message, over 3 minutes, ranting about how I was damaging their family's reputation and how one day you'll regret making such a scene over a chair. A chair. That told me everything I needed to know. They still didn't get it. It was never about the chair. It wasn't just about a chair. It was years, decades, honestly, of disrespect finally breaking through the dam I'd been patching up since we were kids. And after the social media post stirred the pot, Brandon did what Brandon always does. He tried to paper over the cracks instead of fixing the foundation. That's when the group text started. He created a new family group chat, something we'd never had before. It included my parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, even people I hadn't spoken to in years. His opening message was textbook damage control. Hey everyone. Just want to address the recent social media drama. I think things got blown out of proportion. Let's all try to move forward. I stared at that message for a solid minute. Then I replied, happy to move forward. But only when people take accountability, not when they call consequences drama. And then, for a moment, it was quiet. But not for long. My aunt chimed in next. I always wondered why you were seated in the back. We assumed you were volunteering to help with the kitchen or something. Another cousin added, honestly, I thought you left early because you were sick. I had no idea you were treated like that. One by one, the picture Brandon and Heather had tried to paint began to crack. And just like that, Brandon left the group chat without a word. Heather didn't just leave, she went full block mode. I was erased from every platform I shared with her. But that didn't really matter, because this wasn't about getting even anymore. The real full circle moment came about 3 weeks later, when a letter arrived in the mail. It was handwritten. Heavy cream envelope, slightly smudged ink, no return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was from Brandon. The letter was short. No dramatics, no excuses. Just raw words, carefully chosen. Nick, I've been reflecting. A lot. About everything. I didn't see it then, but I see it now. I let Heather call the shots because I thought keeping the peace was more important than standing up for my brother. I was wrong. You've always had my back, and I made you feel invisible at the most important moment of my life. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to say thank you for everything you did, and I'm sorry for everything I didn't. Signed, Brandon. No excuses. No demands. Just that. I read it twice. Then I slipped it back in the envelope and set it on my desk, right under the old metal paperweight I never use. I didn't reply. Not right away. It wasn't that I didn't appreciate the apology, because I did. In fact, some part of me had been waiting my whole life to hear him admit he was wrong. Not with conditions. Not with a passive-aggressive, but you're too sensitive. Not with the usual dodge. I didn't mean it that way. Just honesty. But I also knew this wasn't just about the wedding. Or about a chair. It was about all the times I'd stepped aside so he could shine. All the times I'd played the background to keep things calm. All the times I'd let myself shrink just to give him more space. And now, the silence I was holding wasn't out of spite. It wasn't bitterness. It was clarity. I needed to decide, not just about Brandon, but about everyone, what kind of relationship I wanted going forward. Then Thanksgiving came around. It was held at my parents' place, like always. The big spread turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, the works. And yes, Brandon and Heather were invited. Or maybe I should say, still invited, because I was starting to realize how often I'd been the one left out over the years without anyone noticing. A week before, my mom called. Nick, it would mean a lot if you came. No drama, I promise. And for the first time in a long time, I said yes. Not to smooth things over. Not to keep the peace. But because I wasn't afraid of the tension anymore. I walked in that afternoon, and something felt off. Not hostile exactly. Just muted. Cousins gave polite nods. My aunt offered an awkward smile, the kind that felt more like an apology than a greeting. Brandon was in the living room, setting up chairs. When he looked up and saw me, he froze, then gave a small, unsure wave. Heather wasn't there. Later, my mom leaned in and whispered, she had other plans this year. But let's be honest, that probably translated to, she couldn't handle being in a room full of people who finally saw through her. So we sat down to eat. The turkey was dry. The conversation was quieter. And everything had changed. But also, nothing had. I didn't need to give speeches. I didn't need to perform forgiveness. Because this wasn't about one day. This was about a lifetime. And for the first time, I wasn't holding up the roof anymore. Dinner was mostly quiet. Brandon barely touched his food, just picking at it like it was something he couldn't quite swallow. Every once in a while, he'd laugh, too loud, a little forced, like he was trying to convince himself everything was okay. But I wasn't buying it. His eyes kept drifting toward me, like he was waiting for me to give him some kind of sign that things were back to normal. The problem was, I wasn't ready to give that to him. Not yet. After dessert, while people started drifting away and the football game played softly on the TV, Brandon caught me alone in the kitchen. The house was quieter there, the noise from the living room muffled by the walls. He looked like he was searching for the right words. Thanks for coming, he said, his voice low and hesitant. I gave a simple nod. No need to make it complicated. Then he added, and thanks for the letter. That caught me off guard. I could see the relief on his face, like that letter was some kind of lifeline, the first real step to breaking through the wall between us. I told him I meant everything I wrote, that I was a fool for letting things get this out of hand, for swallowing my feelings for so long while pretending everything was fine. He winced at the truth, but didn't argue. For a fleeting second, I thought maybe, just maybe, we could find a way back to something resembling normal. So I looked him dead in the eye and said, what does normal even mean to you, Brandon? Because for me, normal was always being the backup plan. The guy you called when you needed a bailout, but not the one you invited to celebrate your successes. Normal was being shoved off to the side, sitting behind the kitchen at your wedding like I was an afterthought. He sighed deeply, like the weight of that truth finally sank in. I know, he said quietly. I know now, and I don't want it to be like that anymore. You can want that, I told him, but wanting doesn't cut it. You have to earn it. I'm not handing out second chances like candy. You don't get to disrespect someone for years and think one apology makes it all better. He looked down, swallowing the words, nodding slowly as if he was absorbing everything I said for the first time. So what do I do? he asked, voice barely above a whisper. I crossed my arms, steadying myself. You show up. Every time. You stop making everything about you. You take responsibility without needing to be asked. And you stop expecting me to be the fixer every time your world falls apart. He nodded again, slower this time, like he was committing to something for the first time. Okay, I can do that. I shrugged, cautious but hopeful. We'll see. He didn't push for more, not a hug, not a joke to break the tension. For once, he just let the weight of his mistakes sit between us, unspoken but real. That was progress. In the months that followed, something surprising happened. Brandon actually tried. He started with small things, texts that didn't ask for anything, just simple check-ins. Hey, how's work? Thinking about you. Not overly sentimental, just consistent. Like he was trying to rebuild a bridge one brick at a time. Then, one Saturday morning, he showed up at my place with coffee and a bag of croissants. No fanfare, no excuses. No reason, he said, holding up the bag with a sheepish smile. Just wanted to hang out. We watched a game, talked about work, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't mention the wedding or ask for help with some emergency. He just was there, as a brother. It wasn't a fairy tale fix. I didn't trust him overnight. But something had shifted. Slowly, I let myself meet him halfway. Heather? She never reached out. Word was she wasn't thrilled with how things had fallen apart. She lost some social connections after the wedding drama. Friends who had seen how she treated me and weren't about to forget it. She earned a reputation, and it wasn't a good one. By spring, Brandon and Heather announced they were taking space. Not a formal separation, just a pause, a reevaluation. I wasn't surprised. From what I gathered, tensions had been simmering since Phuket, and my refusal to be their doormat forced them to face cracks in their relationship they'd been ignoring. Brandon didn't go into details, but one day over lunch, he said something that stuck with me. I think I got so caught up in impressing everyone that I forgot how to just be real. She loved the version of me that fit her Instagram feed, not the guy eating cold pizza in a hoodie at midnight. I just nodded. It wasn't my place to judge, but I was glad he finally saw it. That summer, Brandon invited me to a small backyard cookout for his birthday. No tuxedos, no fancy decorations, just friends, burgers on the grill, and a cooler full of cheap beer. He handed me the tongs and said with a grin, "You're on grill duty." Tradition, right? It wasn't a grand gesture, but it felt genuine. When the night wound down, he raised his bottle and said, "To Nick, for showing me what a brother should be, even when I didn't deserve it." I didn't make a speech, just clinked bottles with him and said, "Took you long enough." Everyone laughed, but beneath the laughter, something settled between us. I realized forgiveness isn't about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about deciding who's worth investing your future in. That wedding decanter? It still sits in my cabinet. It's not a painful reminder anymore. Just glass, beautiful, solid, and finally being used the way it was meant to be. Kind of like me.